Hey everybody, welcome Deeper Dive. Jimmy and Kel coming at you live here. James looks
Good
so dapper
morning.
today. Looks so good. Had the week off last week. Had a great conversation with Julia. I don't know if you caught that, but we had a pretty good conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
So um, she's really cool. So anyway, moving on into unmuting. We're talking about intercession. The week before last we talked about worship, right?
Hmm.
And you know the I guess the big idea that I got out of what you said this particular week was intercession is exactly that. It's for really built for others, not ourselves, right? So stop
Hmm.
focusing on yourself and focus on other people. And I feel like it really goes hand in hand with the concept of worship as well. Worship's not about how it makes us feel, it's about who we are worshiping. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so I guess I wanted to start off by letting you talk about this idea of reorienting our focus.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And you and I talk about this a lot. We talk about surrender. We talk about obedience and things like that. But people, I think, and I think you and I over the years we have as well. It's just a natural thing. We struggle with intimacy with God on our terms.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I love you and I want to follow you, but again, what are you going to do for me, and how are you going to take care of me? It's no surprise that the prosperity gospel has even came to be,
Yeah.
let alone exploded, because it taps into everyone's basic concept of relationship, which is, what do I get out of it?
Yeah.
I don't even know, James, if I'm being honest, if there's any molecule within us that's not completely selfish. We have to fight against it. I mean, we have to specifically lay things down. Otherwise, if we just act out of our own nature, it's constantly, what am I getting out of this? How is it affecting me? And vice versa. So of course, worship makes sense because that's part of the ATM card, right? We slide the worship in and we expect God's blessings back out. Now, when it comes to prayer, obviously it is about, I'm going to talk to you, God, and here, by the way, here's my Christmas list kind of idea. And yeah, I'll throw some people in there, but at the end of the day, it's still coming back to me. And so I guess I just want to talk about first how how to reorient when your base nature is constantly pulling you to say, hey, don't forget yourself, man. Make sure, you know, yeah, pray for other people. Make sure they're praying for you, right? Make sure that God knows what you need first. And yeah, put other people in there.
It's interesting that I switched the messages this
Hmm.
week. I was going to be doing confession first, and then I
Right,
was
I
going to go
remember.
to intercession. And I'm glad I did intercession first because it does help us to think about God first, worship, praise, right? And then intercession, standing in a gap for other people,
Yeah.
taking other people before the throne of God. Second, and then when we do focus on ourselves, confession. Now here's what I know. Here's what I and I want to be careful when I say this. I know that if we want to start focusing on ourselves, we don't usually want to focus on confession,
Right.
right? And being naked before God. But this idea of intercession, of reorienting our focus, because sometimes we even intercede so that there's something on the other side for us, right?
I agree. That's exactly
And
my point. I
or we
agree.
say we're going to intercede and no intercede.
Right. Well,
You
that's
know,
true. We lie
I've
to people about
I've
praying
gotten
for
to the
them.
point now where if I say I'm going to pray for somebody, I stop. If
Yeah.
they're there, I stop and pray right there.
Do it right
If I
then.
say
Yeah.
I'm going to pray for somebody, I stop right there and I pray because we're so used to saying I'll pray for you, I'll pray for you. Tragedy happened, I'll pray for them. Uh, a shooting happened, let's pray. Let's do this. And we're not really serious about what prayer looks like. First of all. Second of all, what does it mean to intercede? It's not one prayer. It's also a lifestyle and an attitude of prayer to intercede. Uh, I believe it's important for it to take us out of our comfort zone. That intercession should move us out of our comfort zone. That's why sometimes I will have an alarm set on my phone at a weird time, and I'll just set it. Last one was at 4:30 p.m. Made no sense. And every time it went off, I was surprised by it, and it interrupted my day.
Mm,
But that reminded me about, okay, you're interceding for this situation. So standing, I gave this definition: standing between someone's need and God's heart and refusing to be silent. It is stepping in the gap. It is carrying someone else's burdens into the presence of God. Because we are selfish, our inclination, and I don't know if you've ever caught yourself doing this. I'm interceding, and all of a sudden I think of some kind of thing that I got going on like that, and I say,
right.
"Well, God, well, you take care of me too."
Yeah.
As if God's going to forget us, as if God's going to forget us. It's the child and the parent thing all back over again. Don't forget me, Daddy. Daddy's doing something else for my brother, my sibling. Mom's doing something else for and we're like, well, we don't want to be left out. Don't forget us. I've seen people. I've seen people um, who they're so in need of that they will actually go in and interrupt something. There's a kid, a good kid at the gym, Christian kid at the gym, and we always talk and whatever. But anytime I'm talking to someone else, he literally comes up and interrupts because there's that something in us, part of that nature that says, "Don't forget about me." And I
Mm.
think sometimes we're so we're like the little kid that, or the just young adult who just like, well, don't ignore me, don't forget about me. And I don't know whether that's part of sinful nature. I will say this to you. I agree with you. It is part of who we are as humans. But I want to also give some credit to the Western Church
Hmm.
on this one.
This is the first.
I want to give some credit to the Western Church on this because we've taken it. If all of us have this idea of "don't forget about me," we've taken it to a whole new level. The church in the West taught the prosperity gospel to the world.
Yeah, well, that's true.
We, that's who we are. That's our product of Christianity that we've taught to the world. And here's what happened: the world has taken it on great. They love it, right?
Of course.
Um, But let me get back to your original question. This idea, it really is. It takes, I think it takes God's change in us to move us from "what about me" to "God, I want to, I want to stand in the gap for someone else." Could it be that maybe some days you don't need to ask God for anything? I remember Jesus saying, God already knows what you need.
Right.
Look at the lilies of the field. Look at the birds in the air. They don't fuss and cuss and beg and scream, and yet their needs are fully taken care of.
Well,
What
that's why
if
most of
what
our prayers are wants.
what if we just stopped? What if we just assumed that God knows what we want and we just stop asking? Now,
Right.
and the examples I see in the scripture of asking are asking on behalf of other people. But anyway, I've never thought about that before. I think I'm going to spend some time not talking about me and not asking for me, but spending my time all instead of focusing on other people. It's like God sees our need. And I believe if we begin to focus on other people, God sees our need.
I was thinking about one of the when I think one of the bigger faux pas of the Roman Catholic Church is the confessional, in that it turns into, hey, I need you to talk to God for me, ask
Mhm.
forgiveness for me, or
Yep.
distribute forgiveness, or now is here's my needs here, and we end up putting up these blockades. So one of the great things that the Protestant movement did was to um, the priesthood of all believers, allowing everybody gets to approach God um, for themselves. So I just, I wanted to clarify people like it's it's a different form of intercession than a Roman Catholic intercession. The intercession that you're speaking of is basically coming alongside somebody saying they don't need me to do this, but as a brother or sister, I choose to do
Mhm.
this and I want to lift them up to you, Lord. And it's a way of comfort to another person to say, I also am lifting you up. The time that I have with the Lord is spent holding you before them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a different thing because it I don't think it imparts any sort of like magic, sometimes. And, I just think it's what we're created to do in that imago Dei portion of us that it hopefully is growing within us on a daily basis, is that we are constantly seeking to have real relationships and real community of constantly lifting the other people up before the Lord and sort of expecting or knowing that they're doing it for us also. That's not why we do it, but we know that it's happening. So like I think that's the hard thing, James, as you're talking, I like you gave three do these things, action plans.
Mhm.
And one of the action plans I wrote down for myself, which you didn't say, is like go 30 days without praying for anything for yourself.
That's good.
And kind of like what you were just saying. So it's funny because I started to realize that even if I start praying for James, I invariably do slip into, oh, by the
Mhm.
way,
That's right.
or I make it a we type thing,
Yeah.
like we need you to,
Yeah. Don't forget about me, Dad.
yeah.
Don't forget
And
about me.
and so it's like, like, all right, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to try to stop myself from doing it. I am going to try to set that alarm thing to break up the day. I think that's a good idea. Just like Russian roulette it, just spin it with your eyes closed and hit
Mhm.
save. And whatever it is, it is. You know what I mean? Like that would be kind of fun.
The funny thing for me, and I did this all during Lent, 4:30 just is not a time that and no one gets off at 5 o'clock anymore. That's old, right?
Right.
So 4:30 it was just so awkward. And it was God. I think I felt like there was somebody who challenged us to do it for Lent, so I did it for Lent, and I felt like it was one of those things where it just challenged me. Here's the other thing I want to say about just because we alluded to this the first week when we spoke on mute. Intercession sometimes also is praying for people when they can't pray.
Mm,
And you and I have seen situations where people are unable to pray. I was talking to someone who had lost a whole bunch of stuff, lost loved ones, lost home, lost job, lost a whole bunch of stuff. And when I say I'm praying for you, and then take that person before the throne of God, and I remember the person was just so broke, so devastated
yeah.
that they couldn't pray. And so sometimes our prayers are the prayers of people who have no ability to pray. I think that intercession is one of the most important things that we do if we get serious about it. I'm not talking about a drive-by prayer.
Right.
And that's what we often do because we're so selfish. We'll say, God bless this person.
Yeah. Bless this person.
God
Exactly.
heal this person.
Which is no prayer at all, I think.
God look after this person. God, whatever.
Well,
And it's just kind of a drive-by pass. And then we can say, you know what? I said I was going to pray for them, and I prayed for them. I check off the box. That's not what intercession is.
I want to dig into this a little bit more on the healing aspect of it because this is one of the things that, you know, it's a, it's a, it's a slippery slope of prayer sometimes because we always love to quote James, gather the elders of the church, and if you're bring your sick and they'll pray for you, and and anoint and things like that. And there's just there's this idea like you really started talking about it, but you didn't really dig into it. It wasn't appropriate for you to do so. That's why I like this aspect of what we do, because we can dig into these things. Praying for God's will is not the same thing as praying for healing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the difficult thing. Like when it comes to stuff that's very specific, healing, I'm praying, I want this person healed. It's like you said, God knows what we want. It takes a lot of faith and a lot of courage to say, God, your will be done in this. And I know that you will do what is best for so and so and those around so and so. Um, I don't know how you do it, James, but for me, like I just pray like selfishly, Lord, I want this person to be healed, but I'm going to trust you to do what's right. And if it's healing on the other side of this with you, I understand. Whatever the reasoning is, I know that you have the best intentions and the best for this person in the situation. So I guess interceding,
That's
like,
yeah,
but
go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, walk me through that there's like these levels of intercession. Like, you bless this person, be with this person, heal this person. It's just like you said, a box check. I mean, it's just doing the minimum, and I don't even know if it even counts as the minimum, to be honest. For me, like, I don't know that I would even check that box. I don't think you can by saying bless or heal or whatever. But that next level of literally putting this person at the feet of the Lord and saying, you already are going to do what's best. I'm asking you to do what's best.
I'm reminded of the three people who are so desperate to get their friend who needs to be healed before Jesus
Right,
that
right,
they
right.
go on top of a roof and they risk themselves physically. They risk themselves financially because they tear somebody's roof open.
That is a
And they're
great example.
so desperate that they lower this person down before Jesus. And there's something about those friends carrying that person before Jesus in that way that moves the heart of Jesus. And I think that I will say this. It's the reason why I love the pattern for prayer, the Lord's Prayer. We're going to do a series on that. We're not, but even as I do these, I'm thinking about that pattern. And the pattern says, "Your kingdom come, your will be done" in the very beginning. In the very beginning. So whatever we pray, we've already surrendered to what God is doing. The whole thing about the healing thing is this. Sometimes we use the healing thing as a way, our prayer as a way to protect God. So we pray something like this: God, would you heal this person? Um, but you know, your will be done.
Yeah.
And now, so
Yes.
that's one way of doing it.
Right.
And another way of doing it is like you said, God, this person belongs to you. You know this person. You know their first day. You know their last day. I'm coming before you and I am praying, Lord. And I used to say something like this, that you would touch them from the top of their heads to the bottom of their feet. Lord, you know their spirit. You know their emotions. You know their mental. You know their physical. Lord, I pray for a touch in all those areas. And Lord, I just know you know them and you know best. You know more than I know, and you are going to do what is best. And so I pray for your very best for this person in these days. So I think I decided a long time ago that I'm going to pray. When I do those kind of prayers, I'm going to pray like the charismatics do,
Mm,
believing that God can do it.
hmm.
Because for a long time, I was praying like, and I'm going to get in trouble for this. I was praying like the Nazarenes pray.
Hoping.
I was praying and then giving God a break just in case he doesn't decide to do it
Yeah. The way
because I
out.
don't
Yeah.
want to risk the faith. I don't want to climb up the building. So I'm going to just knock on a door and say, Jesus, come out. I got a person you need to heal. If Jesus hears over the crowded noise, then that's fine. But I'm stopping there. Those folks went to the door. They tried to get in the door, but they couldn't get in the door. So they decided to get creative. They decided to put their desperation on display. And for me, really interceding, and let me just have a moment, this kind of moment of transparency here. I don't know. Um, I don't know tons of times in my life where I've interceded this way. All right. And usually, if you intercede this way, it's somebody that you know,
Very well.
somebody that you know well, somebody that you're friendly with, your parent, your sibling,
Yeah.
somebody that you're close with. And so you go and you don't go one time, you go and you keep on going. So intercession, and it could be that intercession on a broad scale is not something that we're supposed to do. Because only from this perspective, we can pray on a broad scale, and that becomes an ask, right? It becomes a ask like, "Give us this day our daily bread." Um,
But you're
but
saying intercession is extremely personal
I think
and
it
specific.
and I think it's personal from this perspective. You can't intercede for a story that you don't know. Not
Mm.
really. You can't intercede for a story that you don't know. Let me just read this. I got this text really quickly. Make sure that.
Well, it's like levels of intercession.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I think we need to recognize that there are depths
I
to it.
like that. I like that.
Um, and it's like depths of worship, to be honest with you. I mean, it's one thing to be driving down the street singing praise music. It's another thing to fall upon your knees and recognizing the glory of God and basking that. Like there
Hmm.
are different levels of that, and I think it's okay in that respect. I just,
Hmm.
before we run out of time, James, I wanted
Yep.
to talk about something that I think is hard for most people, and that's interceding for people that bother you or that are
Oh yeah.
difficult or
Oh yeah.
or have abjectly harmed you
Yep.
in some way, have brought like legitimate, real harm. There's a million stories that we all have. We have personal stories that we think are the worst in the world, and then, I look at like the Amish school shooting,
Oh yeah.
and I see that kind of intercession,
Oh yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, okay, so a woman hurt my feelings really bad and broke my heart, and I'm praying for that person. I feel like a hero, and then I look at, families that were completely decimated, and people that are praying over the shooter and their family, and praying blessings, and praying that God would intercede for them and move in them. I mean, it's unbelievable to me.
Sometimes I think it's unbelievable until I really seriously look at God's view of the kingdom and Jesus' view of the kingdom of God. And when I look at that view, and everything comes back to this, Kelly, for me, when it comes to the whole forgiveness thing, I can't hold any standard
Right,
from
of course.
versus the way that God has forgiven me.
Well, that's because you got to be honest with yourself, James. But most
And
people refuse to admit that.
yeah, I mean, how could I hold somebody
Yeah,
else? And what I love about the Amish people, and I notice this goes right to the heart of their religion, is they have taught us what it means, even if we don't hold up the person, to understand that in that moment, two families were destroyed.
right. You're right.
In that moment, two families were destroyed. There's a recent story about a guy that goes in and kills all his kids. And you've seen the funerals recently here in the States where you got seven kids, seven caskets coming out of a funeral. And most of us would say, what a monster. What a monster. Now he killed himself too, so he sealed his own fate. But what a monster. But I just think that Wesley used to say, "There but for the grace of God go I," which is a very interesting statement. But I want to focus. I agree with you 100%. This idea of holding, Reba Bowen taught me this. I'll give her credit for it. She taught me pray for God's best for that person.
Right.
Pray for and intercede for that person. Because if that person has done something to you enough to hurt you, then you know that person enough to take him before the throne of God.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because sometimes it's like these big serious things, but you even said like, look, there's people in your life that just irritate you.
Yeah.
And it's like, intercede for them, pray for them. James, can I take a minute and pray for you?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Get it? The people that irritate you, you pray for them.
Yeah.
It was a joke. It
Yeah.
was supposed to be a joke. Never mind. You don't irritate me.
I didn't even get it. I will say this. I will say this,
You'll get it
and
later.
I'll say this that um, I believe, and here's the deal, and we don't do it for this, but I think we become better people.
Yeah. Well,
I think we become better people when we
what I
pray for
think
other
is
people.
every time we emulate the heart of God, James, we move slightly closer, and parts of us, the old parts of us that cry out selfishly, die or suppressed and replaced by those things that are more like Christ. And that's why I think like something as simple as saying, gosh, every time I'm around this person, they bother me, truly praying for them, not that God would change them, which is another thing you said, which I love. It's like prayer, intercessory prayer doesn't change other people, it changes you,
Yeah.
and it's like, give me the the um the personality of God, and the patience of God to,
Yeah.
because I mean, imagine how irritating we must be to
Yeah.
God. I mean, and I think
In God's
we don't get it.
eyes, God's eyes, I often say, Lord, would you help me see that person the way you see them? Would you help me see that person the way you see them? And and God sees them as a child of God, that no one that he's not willing that anyone would perish, but that everyone would come to this
Yeah.
saving knowledge of his son, of his son Jesus. And so show me, because I want to see the person the way that I want to see them, but show me the way you see them, and then show me, like, help me understand the way you see me,
Mm.
and then
I
help
need you.
me have that same mindset when it
Right.
comes up. This is not excusing people. This is not, this is
Well,
basically um doing what Jesus done. And
yeah,
I want to end up by talking about Jesus's prayer for his disciples on his before he heads back
yeah.
to heaven.
I agree with you. It's not excusing people, nor is it permission to be harmed,
Yeah.
but
Boundaries are
it
important.
but it is a way of giving them over to the Lord and saying, this is, I Lord, you intersect their life, you know. And I mean, Jesus demonstrated that kind of prayer even from the cross, right?
Yeah.
I just give me 45 seconds or 1 minute I want you to speak on something that you didn't. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about the correlation of prayer and grace, of
Mhm.
intercessory prayer and grace. Just speak on that for a minute and then go
Okay.
into the Jesus prayer and close us up.
Um, I believe that if grace is God's unmerited favor, then when we go before God and intercede on someone else, it extends grace into their lives.
Mhm.
And intercession has always been about grace. I've often said that there were people praying for me before I even knew who God was.
Mhm.
And as people pray for me, that's God's prevenient grace at work in my life. And so we have this, and I want to be careful I say this. We have this ability to participate in what God is doing in someone else's life. I was talking to Antoine Gay last night. Antoine Gay is Marvin's gay brother, and he goes
Mhm.
to my gym, and we talk pretty often. And we were just talking about this idea, and we were talking about governments. Oh, my doctor person is arriving now, and she's very early, and I'm not going to be there. That's fine. Um, we talked this idea of grace and interceding, and we just talked about it was talking about praying for your governments and praying for your leaders
Mhm.
and interceding for them. And man, goodness gracious, if the Christian church would pray for our leaders, not just the leaders they agree with, because it's easy to pray for them. It's easy to intercede for them. But
Right.
what if the church began to pray for leaders they don't agree with? What if the church just began to hold its leaders before the throne of God? And so I have I'm spending this time. In fact, I was going to say something negative about a leader the other day, and God reminded me we're not saying anything negative about them. We're praying for them, right? And I was talking about Virginia and its leadership these days and all kinds of different things that are happening. And
Hmm.
God said, "Don't oh, give me one second here. Don't 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 critique, pray. Pray."
Fire.
And so and so I I've decided I'm going to pray for these people. I think the last thing I want to talk about is praying for people, and it kind of piggybacks on this. Praying for people before the disaster.
Mm,
Sometimes we see a disaster coming, and real people who stand in the gap are like Jesus, who prayed for his disciples before the disaster happened. He stood in the gap.
yeah.
He said, "Hey, God, it's coming." Not only did he pray for them, but he prayed for everyone who would believe in him because of them. So way back then, Jesus was praying and interceding for us.
Mm,
One of the greatest things that we can do and be are people who intercede, who stand in the gap, and who bring people's needs to the throne of God. But here's what we'll do: it will take us moving outside of our own selfishness and self centeredness to do so. Because at the end of the day, it's a secondary thought after we take care of our own self.
mm,
And you and I know the prayer warriors. We know everybody talks about being a prayer warrior, but you and I know the
yeah.
prayer warriors. There was no mistake about the people who actually took people before the throne of God, who knocked on the door and kept on knocking. It would not stop knocking. And so I believe that there's a special gift there, but that doesn't let the rest of us off the hook
Right.
to stand in the gap for other people.
Right on. Well, we're going to wrap that up here, James. We can talk about this for a long time, and I think it's very interesting. So maybe it'll carry over to next week a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to talk
What?
about confession next week, but when we
Yeah.
get let's double back to this a little bit next
Yeah, I
week.
want to. I want to because there's more I'd like to hear about. So thanks for watching, everybody, and this will be a good setup for next week. And I think it's going to be a hard one next week. So
Oh, next
strap
week.
in.
I prepared it 3 weeks ago, and
Okay.
it's a hard one. And every
Yeah.
time I look at it, I just think to myself, James, are you going to really say that?
Yeah.
And the answer is
Good.
yes.
It's the
And
best.
it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hardest for me. It's gonna
Yeah,
be
I'm with you.
hardest for me.
I'm with you. I mean, preaching in front of a mirror sometimes is the worst. All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate the message. Thanks, man. Good luck today. And thanks everybody for watching. We love you and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.